Now I'm going to bring in another question here, and this is from Eric Truant, who's talking actually about something that I think is really dear to you, Patrick, because he's talking about cartoonists doing non-traditional commentary using pictures. So not necessarily the comics that you see in the newspaper. You're in your introduction, Patrick, you call yourself a comics reporter. And you, Rob, I've seen you at conventions, political conventions, cartooning live and doing journalism there. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, the kind of things you do, but also your approach to cartooning in that way.
So who first, Rob?
That's a good question. Well, you guys shoot it out to see who's going to get this one first.
Well, I'll just quickly talk about, most of the time I'm sitting there drawing, the standard single panel editorial cartoon. But when I was going to these conventions and, the newspaper would send me every 4 years, it was so much fun to just get outside of that box and just report things and write about local things and other things. And I kind of did it differently every year. One year I was making little videos. One year I was just doing a blog when blogs were big. And then I started doing these long form comics toward the end where I would take each day of the convention and write something about it. And usually they'd be, have a punchline and be funny, but not always. So yeah, it wasn't exactly comics journalism as much as it was just sort of me, riffing about the convention, but it was close.
Patrick.
Well, Cal, you should be answering this question because you have experienced all the forms possible, animations, 3D, theater, you've done everything. And just like you and Rob, I think the three of us are big believers in the power of the image. And for all the talk about the demise of political cartooning, the tool we are using, the cartoon, the very simple tool we are using is very modern and we can use it in so many ways. So I've been a reporter for the last 30 years, going to the field, reporting through comics. I remember, especially in these days, a story I did a few years ago, 1 year after Russia invaded South Ossetia. I was able to go to South Ossetia and to witness first the destruction that was still very visible and the annexation of Russia and the Russian occupation of that part of the Caucasus. And of course, there's a lot of similarities with what's going on now. I've done, just like you guys, cartoons on stage. I think you can imagine all sorts of ways to use cartooning on stage, really like stand-up humor, but based on the power of cartoons. And cartoons take on a new life when you, just like you showed us, Cal, and I've been doing this for a long time, you decline your cartoons in different parts and you keep the punchline to the end. And that works very well with an audience. You can imagine all sorts of animation. And now with the smartphones, sort of interactive political cartoons where people swipe and have an effect on the development of the cartoon. There are so many things we can still do and that are yet to be done with cartoons.
Yeah, that's a great observation. There's some questions about how technology has affected us, and because we all started out, newspapers' natural home, cartoonists' natural home had been in newspapers. But it's just as you say, Patrick, we're really visual satirists is really where we are. And we're just finding new ways to harness it. The normal cartoons that people imagine are black and white were all started a couple of hundred years ago because the technology at the time was etching, ink on paper and stone and stuff. But now that we're broadening out, we shouldn't be scared. We're going to embrace it. This is so cool. And I suspect that there's more satire now than ever between, the television programs. And then as the internet has lowered the barrier to entry, there's all sorts of people who are doing their own satire, whether it's, word balloons on a photograph or their own little, riffs. But the challenge, though, however, for people like us and all future satirists, if you want to be paid to do this, you've got to be better than the ones on the internet, right? You've got to be able to.
And that's a point brought up by Patricia. Will cartoonists be paid in these new forms? Who pays?
I'll pay Rob. Rob, you pay Patrick.
Yeah, I'll start paying both of you guys to give me ideas. How about that?
No, but that's a very good question about the economy of it, especially when you talk about comics journalism. This has been a genre that has been emerging over the last 20 years. It's big now. A lot of media would like to have it, but when you come to them with a project, with a budget and with what it takes to actually go to the field, do the reporting, come back, take 2-3 weeks to come up with at least a magazine length story, it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Well, also into the same argument is Rob and I joined a fairly young group called Counterpoint, which anybody can join, counterpoint.com. And every day there's cartoons from the left and from the right. People get them as part of the email mailbox
Newsletter
gift that they can see, a newsletter. They'll get it 2 days a week free, and then for a very small amount you can get it every single day. But the idea is that this is the way people are consuming cartoons, and it's full of energy. It's really a lot of fun. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, so, and I just one other point. One of the other things besides Counterpoint I do is TinyView, which is an app for comics, which makes it available on your phone so you can scroll up and down instead of across, and it's really kind of a nice way to look at comics. So tinyview.com, just a plug.
Yes, and Eric Truand, who asked a question, is a French cartoonist taking part in a project called La Torche, and it's an application. It's a smartphone application for political cartoons. So
excellent.
There are new media.
So, and it looks like we have a few of everyone looks in the chat, they can see some links to those things. Well, our time is closing down a little bit here. It's been so much fun. But before we leave, there's something I want to share my computer again, because there's an event that took place just last week pertaining to cartooning that I think you guys will all find really interesting. All right, let me get back to the business of sharing the screen here. And we're going to bring you back up here and here, and let's get this thing going like this. Okay, so Patrick, tell us about what we're seeing here.
Oh, so that's something that happened a few days ago, May 3. And that day is, as you all know, the World Press Freedom Day, May 3. And that's the day we usually, with our foundation in Geneva, the Freedom Cartoonist Foundation, we give out our International Cartoon Award. And we had this ceremony 2 weeks ago in Geneva, and it was a beautiful moment, uplifting news for cartooning, because we were able to, that's the crazy dream we had, was to bring in there the 2 Nobel Peace Prize laureates. Something very special happened this year. The 2 Nobel Peace Laureates are 2 journalists, which is something that did not happen for the last 86 years. Maria Ressa from the Philippines, a global voice against big tech companies and what they do to democracy. And Dmitry Muratov, who's the incredibly courageous editor of Novaya Gazeta. So both of them, you'll have a picture where you see both of them on stage. We were able to get them in Geneva, which was a miracle, because up to 3 days before the event, we didn't know if they would be able to make it. So it was the first time they were reunited since Oslo last December, when they got their award. Both of them voices of courage. And the beautiful moment was to not only listen to them, to their very thoughtful keynotes, but then the 2 of them were able to hand the Kofi Annan Courage in Cartooning Award, which is the international prize of our foundation, to 2 cartoonists, Gabor Papai of Hungary and Vladimir Kazanevsky of Ukraine. Just with this event and this ceremony, we wanted to place the political cartooning in its larger role, in a larger picture, because let's remember, cartooning, political cartooning was part of the history of the fight for a free press. And it is a free press is a pillar of democracy. And I think that political cartooning is an important part of it. And having those people on the stage together with the two Nobels joining us was such a testimony to that fact, and such a great moment for our community. And I shall just add that we have an agreement with Cartoonist Rights Network International that you all know in the United States. And we're gonna alternate the awards. So next year will be the Rob Russell Courage in Cartooning Award from CRNI. And the year after that, we will be giving our award in Geneva. So 1 year in the US, 1 year in Europe. And we just want to give more visibility to political cartoonists and to our winners.
Patrick, thank you so much. That was so great. And what a great way to end our fun conversation, celebrating the potential of cartoons, the bravery of some cartoonists, and its full potential that we think is going to be with us for decades to come. So again, honoring our good friend, Rob Rogers. Thank you for coming. Great cartoonist from Pittsburgh. Patrick, as always, this was great fun, everyone. And I'm gonna pass the microphone over to Patricia in the Overseas Press Club.
Well, this was really just a fascinating and inspiring program. And I just hope that, you know, with the demise of the newspapers being the biggest supporter of cartoonists, that you and the cartoonists of the future can make a living, and a great living, by doing what you love and what you do so well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.